The violin strings snapped like brittle bones in Principal Hargrove's office as 14-year-old Melody Chen's prized instrument was systematically destroyed before her eyes. Dr. Hargrove stood watching, satisfied in her cold gaze as she forced the music teacher to continue until nothing remained playable. The principal had found her perfect target, a gifted musician whose diplomat father was stationed overseas and whose partial deafness made her vulnerable. A single video, secretly captured by Melody's friend Zoe, traveled across oceans to Ambassador James Chen's secure phone. What Westridge Academy didn't realize as they issued their one-week suspension and dismissive statement was that they hadn't just broken an instrument. They had declared war on a man who had negotiated peace treaties between hostile nations. And when James Chen walked through those school doors 3 days later in his formal diplomatic attire, the hallway fell silent, everyone instantly understanding that this wasn't just about a violin. This was about justice. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Westridge Academy's music room, casting warm rectangles across the polished floor. Melody Chen sat alone at the piano, her fingers dancing across the keys as she worked through a difficult passage of Chopin. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, revealing the small, nearly invisible hearing aid in her right ear. The beautiful instrument wasn't just a hobby, it was her voice in a world where she struggled to hear her own. Born with partial hearing loss in her right ear, Melody had discovered music as a bridge between silence and sound. The vibrations she could feel through her fingertips on violin strings or piano keys filled gaps that her hearing aid couldn't. At 14, she was already being scouted by prestigious conservatories, her talent transcending her disability. Melody Chen. Dr. Hargrove's sharp voice cut through the room. What do you think you're doing? Melody's hands froze mid-chord. She hadn't heard the principal enter, a common occurrence when she was immersed in music. Just practicing during my free period, Dr. Hargrove, she said quietly, her slight accent betraying her international upbringing. Dr. Hargrove strode across the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She towered over the piano, arms crossed tightly over her chest. At 53, Victoria Hargrove had been principal of Westridge Academy for 15 years, and she prided herself on maintaining the school's prestigious reputation. That doesn't look like AP Physics to me, she said, eyeing the music sheets with disdain. This is why your science grades are slipping. Too busy with these indulgences. Melody's grades weren't slipping. She was top of her class in every subject, but she didn't correct the principal. Instead, she stared at the keys, waiting for the moment to pass. And this violin? Dr. Hargrove continued, picking up Melody's case from beside the piano. So expensive, so foreign. Don't you think it's a bit much for school? A few students passing by the open door slowed their pace, watching the interaction with curious eyes. Zoe Williams, Melody's best friend since Melody had transferred to Westridge 2 years ago, stopped completely, her instincts telling her something was wrong. The morning announcements crackled over the PA system, saving Melody from having to respond. Vice Principal Thornton's monotone voice filled the room. Attention students and faculty. This is a reminder that our strict focus on academic excellence will be enforced starting today. All students must comply with the curriculum priorities outlined in the handbook. Extracurricular activities are secondary. Thank you for your cooperation. Dr. Hargrove's thin lips curved into a smile. Well, isn't that timely? She set the violin case down with deliberate carelessness. Come with me, Miss Chen. Melody slowly rose from the piano bench, her heart pounding. She carefully closed the case and picked it up, clutching it protectively against her chest. Leave that here, Dr. Hargrove instructed. You won't be needing it for the rest of the day. Dr. Hargrove, Melody whispered, her voice barely audible. This violin is... Speak up, Dr. Hargrove interrupted. If you have something to say it clearly. Melody swallowed hard. This violin is very important to me, my father. Your father isn't here, Dr. Hargrove cut in, and I doubt he'd approve of you prioritizing music over academics. She grabbed Melody by the arm. Let's go. We'll sort this out in my office. As Dr. Hargrove pulled Melody toward the door, Zoe quickly slipped her phone from her pocket and pressed record, capturing the principal's tight grip on Melody's arm and the fear on her friend's face. The hallway stretched endlessly as Dr. Hargrove marched Melody toward the administrative wing, her fingers digging into the girl's upper arm. Students in other classrooms glanced up as they passed, curious eyes following the unfolding scene. "Miss Winters," Dr. Hargrove called as they entered the main office. "Please summon Mr. Blackwell immediately." The secretary looked up from her computer, her brow furrowing as she took in Melody's tear-streaked face. "What seems to be the problem?" "This student is in violation of our academic focus policy," Dr. Hargrove stated flatly. "She's been neglecting her studies for frivolous pursuits." "I haven't," Melody managed to say. "My grades are perfect. Please check." "Don't bother," Dr. Hargrove interrupted. "I've reviewed her file this morning. There's a concerning downward trend in sciences." This was a lie, but Melody was too overwhelmed to challenge it. She clutched her violin case tighter, as if it could shield her from what was happening. "But her father specifically arranged for her music accommodations," Miss Winters said hesitantly. "Ambassador Chen spoke with the board directly." "Her father's diplomatic status doesn't exempt her from school policies." Dr. Hargrove's tone was suddenly sympathetic, though her eyes remained cold. "Look, I understand this is difficult, but rules are rules. We need to examine this distraction." Miss Winters hesitated. "Shouldn't we call her mother first?" "Her mother's in Geneva with the ambassador." Dr. Hargrove lied again, her voice confident. "This is a school policy matter. We're authorized to intervene when a student's academic performance is at risk." Still uncertain, Miss Winters glanced between Dr. Hargrove and Melody. "I suppose if there's a legitimate concern." "There is," Dr. Hargrove assured her. "Now please get Mr. Blackwell." Minutes later, Theodore Blackwell, the school's music teacher, entered the office. Tall and thin with prematurely gray hair, he had been Melody's greatest advocate at Westridge. "Dr. Hargrove," he began, "what's this about Melody?" "Mr. Blackwell, I believe you've been allowing Miss Chen excessive practice time during school hours," Dr. Hargrove said, her tone accusatory. "Time that should be devoted to core academics. Melody maintains perfect grades." Mr. Blackwell replied, confusion evident in his voice. "Her music schedule was approved by the board after her father's presentation on the cognitive benefits of musical training." "That arrangement is being reconsidered," Dr. Hargrove said dismissively. "In the meantime, I need to examine this instrument that seems to be causing so much disruption." Melody's blood ran cold. "No, please," she begged. "My violin. You don't understand." But Dr. Hargrove was already guiding her into the principal's office, with Mr. Blackwell following reluctantly. "This is for your own good, Melody," Dr. Hargrove said, switching on the bright overhead lights. "Everyone follows the same rules here." With a swift motion, Dr. Hargrove took the violin case from Melody's trembling hands and placed it on her desk. She opened it, revealing the gleaming instrument inside a rare Italian violin that had been in Melody's mother's family for generations. "Quite extravagant for a student instrument," Dr. Hargrove remarked, lifting it carelessly. "Dr. Hargrove, please be careful," Mr. Blackwell warned. "That's a valuable instrument." "All the more reason it doesn't belong in school," Dr. Hargrove replied. She examined the violin with feigned interest, then suddenly tightened her grip on the neck. "Oh, look at this. The strings are dangerously tight. This could snap and injure someone." Before either Melody or Mr. Blackwell could react, Dr. Hargrove twisted the pegs with deliberate force. The E-string snapped with a sharp twang, lashing across the polished wood. "Oh dear," Dr. Hargrove said with mock concern. "This instrument is clearly unsafe." "Stop," Melody cried, lunging forward. "Please stop." Mr. Blackwell stepped between them. "Dr. Hargrove, this is completely inappropriate. That violin is private property." "It's on school grounds, which makes it subject to safety inspections," Dr. Hargrove countered. She handed the violin to Mr. Blackwell. "Since you're the music teacher, you should be the one to make it safe. Remove the remaining strings, please." "I will do no such thing," Mr. Blackwell refused, carefully placing the violin back in its case. Dr. Hargrove's expression hardened. Then you're refusing to follow a direct instruction from your superior. I'll be noting that in your file, Mr. Blackwell. She turned to her computer. Miss Chen, you may wait outside while Mr. Blackwell and I discuss his insubordination. Melody stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. My violin, she whispered. Out, Dr. Hargrove ordered. In the outer office, Melody collapsed into a chair, her body shaking with silent sobs. Through the thin walls she could hear raised voices, though her hearing impairment made it impossible to distinguish the words. After what seemed like an eternity, Mr. Blackwell emerged, his face ashen. I'm so sorry, Melody, he whispered, not meeting her eyes. She threatened my job, my pension. I have a family. Cold dread washed over Melody. What did she make you do? Before he could answer, Dr. Hargrove appeared in the doorway, holding Melody's violin case. Your instrument has been made safe, she announced, handing it to Melody with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You can take it home now, and you'll be focusing exclusively on academics for the remainder of the semester. Melody opened the case with trembling hands. Inside lay her beloved violin, all 4 strings removed, the bridge knocked loose, and deep scratches marring the once perfect varnish. But worst of all, there was a hairline crack running along the back panel damage that would forever alter the instrument's voice. You'll receive a formal notice about your academic probation. Dr. Hargrove continued as if she hadn't just destroyed a priceless heirloom. No music activities until your science grades improve. Melody couldn't speak. She closed the case, clutching it to her chest as she stumbled out of the office. In the hallway, Zoe was waiting, her face tight with worry. Without a word, she wrapped an arm around Melody's shoulders and guided her toward the bathroom. Once inside, Melody finally broke down, her sobs echoing against the tile walls. She broke it, Melody gasped between tears. She made Mr. Blackwell break my violin, my mother's violin. Zoe held her friend tightly. I recorded her dragging you to the office, she said, and I called your aunt as soon as I saw what was happening. Melody's aunt, Dr. Sophia Chen, was a renowned surgeon who had been caring for Melody while her parents were stationed in Geneva. Unlike her diplomat brother, Sophia was fiery and direct qualities that would soon prove invaluable. That evening, as the video began circulating among concerned parents, the school issued a brief statement. We are aware of a disciplinary misunderstanding that occurred today. The administrator involved has been reminded of proper protocols. The privacy of all parties will be respected during this process. No mention of the destroyed violin, no mention of Melody's hearing impairment, no mention of the humiliation a 14-year-old girl had endured at the hands of someone meant to protect her. Dr. Sophia Chen paced the living room floor of her elegant townhouse, her cell phone pressed tightly against her ear. The renowned neurosurgeon had been trying to reach her brother for hours, leaving increasingly urgent messages. James, call me as soon as you get this, she said, her voice strained. It's about Melody. Something happened at school. It's bad. She ended the call and ran a hand through her short, stylish hair, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. Ambassador James Chen was in closed-door negotiations in Geneva, his communications limited by security protocols. Sophia had no way of knowing when he'd receive her messages. Right now, she was on her own. Upstairs, Melody hadn't spoken a word since arriving home. She'd simply placed her damaged violin on her bed and sat beside it, staring at the wall, occasionally running her fingers over the case as if to reassure herself it was still there. The vibrant, talented girl who filled the house with music had gone silent, and the silence was deafening. Sophia knocked gently on Melody's door. Sweetheart, I made your favorite soup. When there was no response, she pushed the door open slightly. Melody sat motionless on her bed, her expression vacant. Beside her lay the open violin case, the damaged instrument a painful sight. Oh, Melody, Sophia whispered, setting the soup bowl on the desk and sitting beside her niece. She gently placed an arm around the girl's shoulders. We're going to fix this, I promise. Melody finally looked at her aunt, her eyes red-rimmed but dry, as if she had no tears left. She reached for her notebook and wrote a single sentence. It won't sound the same. Sophia read the note, her heart breaking. For Melody, the violin wasn't just an instrument. It was her voice, her connection to her mother's heritage, her way of navigating a world that was partially silent to her. And Dr. Hargrove had taken that away with calculated cruelty. Maybe not, Sophia admitted, but we'll find the best luthier in the country, and in the meantime, we'll make sure Dr. Hargrove never does this to another student. Meanwhile, across town, Dr. Victoria Hargrove had called an emergency meeting in her office. The blinds were drawn, and her secretary had strict instructions not to interrupt. "This is a potential PR nightmare," Hargrove muttered, loosening her pearl necklace. At 53, she'd built Westridge Academy into one of the most prestigious private schools in the state, with alumni in Ivy League universities and generous donors funding state-of-the-art facilities. A scandal could unravel everything. "The video doesn't show the actual incident in your office," Vice Principal Thornton said, his voice measured. "We can frame this as a misunderstanding about academic priorities." "Exactly," Hargrove nodded. "The girl was neglecting her studies for music. We were simply redirecting her focus." "What about the violin?" Mr. Blackwell asked quietly from his corner chair. "That was a valuable instrument with significant sentimental value." Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "The violin was damaged during a routine safety inspection. Unfortunate, but hardly malicious." "You made me remove the strings and loosen the bridge," Blackwell countered, his voice gaining strength. "You deliberately mishandled it until the wood cracked." "Careful, Theodore," Hargrove warned. "Remember, your contract renewal is coming up. I'd hate to see your family lose their health insurance over a difference in recollection." Blackwell fell silent, the threat hanging heavy in the air. He had a son with chronic health issues. They both knew he couldn't risk losing coverage. "Here's our approach," Hargrove continued. "We acknowledge a disciplinary incident occurred. We say proper procedures weren't followed, hence a formal reprimand in my file. We offer to repair the violin as a gesture of goodwill, and if the family pushes—" "They will," Thornton interjected. "The girl's father is a diplomat with significant connections." "Then we suggest private mediation," Hargrove replied. "Keep it out of the courts and the press. Offer a scholarship to a music program somewhere else. Get the girl out of our school before she causes more trouble." As the administrators plotted, Melody sat in her darkening bedroom. Her sketchbook lay open beside her, but the pencil remained untouched. The music compositions she'd been working on, brave, complex pieces that had earned her recognition in international competitions, seemed meaningless now, distant dreams from another life. She ran her hand over the cracked violin again, feeling the fissure that had forever altered its voice. The physical sensation was strange, but it was nothing compared to the hollowness inside her. In her mind, she kept replaying the moment when the first string snapped. The sudden silence, the satisfaction in Dr. Hargrove's eyes, the helplessness. Sophia knocked gently on her door again. "Melody, there's someone here to see you." Melody didn't respond. She hadn't spoken since climbing into her aunt's car that afternoon. "It's Mr. Blackwell," Sophia added softly. "He says it's important." This caught Melody's attention. She looked up, uncertainty in her eyes. Mr. Blackwell entered hesitantly, his tall frame seeming diminished somehow. In his hands, he held a small recording device. "Melody," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I failed you today. I should have refused, no matter the consequences. I should have protected you and your instrument." He placed the recorder on her desk. "I can't change what happened, but I can help make it right. I recorded everything in Dr. Hargrove's office after you left." Her admitting what she did, threatening my job if I reported it, everything. Melody's eyes widened slightly, the first real reaction she'd shown in hours. "She's done this before," Mr. Blackwell continued. "Not with instruments, but with students she decides don't fit her vision of Westridge. Usually international students or scholarship kids. I've been keeping notes, gathering evidence. I was too afraid to come forward alone, but I'm not afraid anymore." He turned to Sophia. "Dr. Chen, I'm willing to testify about what happened today and about the pattern of behavior I've witnessed, whatever it costs me." Sophia nodded, a new determination in her eyes. "Thank you, Theodore. This changes everything." In another part of town, Zoe sat at her sister Layla's kitchen table, watching her upload the video clip. Layla, a law student focusing on educational equity, examined the footage with professional interest. Are you sure we should do this? Zoe asked nervously. Melody is so private. She might not want everyone to see. Layla looked up from her laptop. This isn't just about Melody, Zoe. This is about abuse of power. This is about who gets to decide what talents are valuable and whose voices deserve to be heard. But Melody will be mortified if this goes viral, Zoe insisted. Maybe, Layla acknowledged. But sometimes the only way to fight injustice is to expose it. And from what you've told me, this isn't Dr. Hargrove's first offense, just her most blatant. She hit the upload button. Done. Now we wait. By morning, the short clip had been viewed over 15,000 times. Comments flooded in, most expressing outrage, some questioning what happened after the recording stopped, others demanding to know why a principal would target a student with a disability. Zoe texted Melody repeatedly but received no response. Worried, she finally called Dr. Chen directly. She's not ready to talk yet, Sophia explained gently. But she knows you're there for her. That means everything right now. Is there anything I can do? Zoe asked, her voice small with guilt over the video's spread. Actually, yes, Sophia replied. We need to find other students who've had similar experiences with Dr. Hargrove. The more evidence we have of a pattern, the stronger our case. Case? Zoe repeated. You're suing the school? We're exploring all options, Sophia said diplomatically. But first, we need the full picture. While Zoe began discreetly reaching out to current and former students, Sophia took Melody to see Dr. Eliza Patel, a specialist in trauma therapy who had worked extensively with children with hearing impairments. Melody, Dr. Patel said gently after introducing herself, I understand you haven't been speaking since the incident. Is it because you don't want to, or because you feel you can't? Melody considered the question, then wrote in her notebook, words feel trapped inside. Dr. Patel nodded. That's a common response to trauma. Your brain is protecting you by shutting down certain functions. It's temporary. She handed Melody a small electronic tablet. If speaking feels impossible right now, would you be comfortable typing your thoughts instead? Melody took the tablet hesitantly, then typed, My violin was my voice. Now both are broken. I understand, Dr. Patel said softly. Music has always been your way of communicating beyond words, hasn't it? Especially with your hearing impairment. Melody nodded, tears filling her eyes. We'll work on finding your voice again, both of them, Dr. Patel promised. But healing isn't linear. Some days will be harder than others, and that's okay. As Melody began her therapy sessions, Sophia was building their case. She contacted 3 of the most respected luthiers in the country, sending detailed photographs of the damaged violin. All 3 confirmed what they already knew. While the instrument could be repaired, it would never produce the same quality of sound. The damage was permanent and had devalued the heirloom significantly. Armed with these assessments, Sophia scheduled a meeting with the school board. Dr. Hargrove had been strategically excluded, though Vice Principal Thornton was present, looking uncomfortable. Gentlemen, ladies, Sophia began, her surgeon's precision evident in every word. What happened to my niece was not a disciplinary misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of cruelty targeting a student with a disability, resulting in the destruction of a valuable family heirloom. She placed a folder on the table. Inside, you'll find expert assessments of the damage to Melody's violin, medical documentation of her hearing impairment, and testimony from Mr. Theodore Blackwell about what transpired in Dr. Hargrove's office. The board members exchanged concerned glances as they reviewed the materials. Dr. Chen. The board chair began cautiously. We take these allegations very seriously. Dr. Hargrove has been reprimanded, and the school has offered to cover repair costs for the instrument. Repair costs? Sophia's voice was dangerously quiet. My brother purchased that violin from our mother for $175,000 5 years ago. The current estimated value after repairs is approximately $30,000. The difference is not something you can simply write a check for. Murmurs rippled through the room. Furthermore, Sophia continued, this isn't about money, it's about accountability. Dr. Hargrove deliberately targeted Melody because of her international background and her hearing impairment. She destroyed not just an instrument, but a child's sense of safety and self-expression. These are serious accusations, the board chair replied. Do you have evidence of discriminatory intent? Yes, Sophia said simply, pressing play on the recording Mr. Blackwell had provided. Dr. Hargrove's voice filled the room, cold and clear. These international students with their special accommodations and expensive instruments. They need to learn that in America, academics come first. Her father's diplomatic status doesn't impress me. The recording continued, revealing Hargrove's deliberate mishandling of the violin and her threats against Mr. Blackwell's job. By the time it ended, several board members looked physically ill. We had no idea, the chair finally said. This is disturbing. It's criminal, Sophia corrected. And it's not isolated. We've identified 7 other international or disabled students who experienced similar targeting by Dr. Hargrove over the past 3 years. She placed another folder on the table. Their statements are all here. I suggest you review them before my brother returns from Geneva next week. Ambassador Chen is not as patient as I am, and he has connections that extend far beyond this boardroom. The implied threat hung in the air as Sophia gathered her materials. We expect Dr. Hargrove's immediate termination and a formal apology to Melody. Anything less will result in legal action that will make today's conversation seem pleasant by comparison. As she turned to leave, Vice Principal Thornton spoke up. Dr. Chen, wait. There's something else you should know. Thornton's revelation was shocking. Dr. Hargrove had been investigated twice before at previous schools for similar incidents targeting minority or disabled students. Both times, the matters had been settled privately, with non-disclosure agreements preventing the details from following her to Westridge. The board knew? Sophia asked, her voice tight with controlled fury. Not all of us, Thornton admitted. Just the executive committee. They felt her fundraising abilities and connections outweighed the risks. Sophia's expression hardened. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. That evening, as Sophia updated Melody on the board meeting, her phone rang with an international number. Ambassador James Chen had finally received her messages and was calling from Geneva. James, Sophia said with palpable relief. Thank God. I just saw the video. James's normally diplomatic tone was replaced with cold anger. Tell me everything. Sophia detailed the events, from Dr. Hargrove's initial confrontation to the destruction of the violin to their meeting with the school board. She explained Melody's traumatic mutism and the therapy they had begun. I'm coming home, James said immediately. I'll be on the next flight. What about the negotiations? Sophia asked, knowing her brother was in the middle of delicate peace talks. Some things are more important than diplomacy, James replied. My daughter needs me. 20 hours later, Ambassador James Chen's private car pulled into the circular driveway of Sophia's townhouse. Despite the long flight, he looked immaculate in his tailored suit, though the dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion and worry. Melody was waiting at the window. When she saw her father, she ran down the stairs and into his arms the moment he entered, burying her face against his chest in silent tears. I'm here now, little songbird, he whispered, using his childhood nickname for her. I'm here. Over dinner, James listened as Sophia outlined everything they had learned and the steps they had already taken. His diplomatic training was evident in his measured responses and thoughtful questions, but beneath his calm exterior, a storm was brewing. The violin was your mother's, he said to Melody, who nodded sadly. She would be proud of how you've handled this with dignity and strength. Melody typed on her tablet. I haven't been strong. I can't even speak. James read her words and shook his head. Strength isn't always about what you say. Sometimes it's about enduring what seems unendurable. You're stronger than you know, Melody. The next morning, Ambassador Chen made 3 phone calls. The first was to an old Harvard classmate who had become one of the most successful educational rights attorneys in the country. The second was to the State Department, informing them he would be extending his family emergency leave. The third was to Dr. Victoria Hargrove herself. Ambassador Chen, Hargrove answered, her voice falsely warm. I was hoping we could speak. This unfortunate situation. Dr. Hargrove, James interrupted, his tone glacial. I will be at Westridge Academy tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I expect you to be in your office. This is not a request. Before she could respond, he ended the call. That afternoon, James took Melody to visit Master Luthier Giovanni Rossi, an elderly Italian craftsman whose family had been making and repairing fine-string instruments for 7 generations. Rossi examined the damaged violin with gentle hands, his expression growing increasingly grave. "This was not an accident," he said finally, his accent thick but his meaning clear. "This was done with intention." "Can it be repaired?" James asked, though he already knew the answer. Rossi sighed. "The body, yes. The soul of the instrument? That is another matter. When wood is damaged this way, the voice changes forever." Melody's eyes filled with tears, but Rossi wasn't finished. He disappeared into his back room and returned carrying a violin case. "This instrument," he said, opening the case to reveal a beautiful violin with warm amber varnish, "belonged to my daughter. She no longer plays. Her hands have arthritis now. But the violin, it remembers her touch." He held it out to Melody. "It is not the same as your family heirloom, but perhaps it can help you find your music again while I work on yours." Melody hesitated, then carefully took the offered instrument. She positioned it under her chin, feeling its unfamiliar weight and balance. When she drew the bow across the strings, the sound was different, warmer, deeper than her own violin, but beautiful in its own way. For the first time since the incident, Melody felt something other than despair. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The faintest glimmer of a path forward. The morning sun cast long shadows across Westridge Academy's manicured grounds as Ambassador James Chen's diplomatic vehicle pulled through the gates. He hadn't been home long enough to change out of his formal attire, nor did he want to. 20 hours of travel had left him exhausted, but determination coursed through his veins, keeping fatigue at bay. "Remember what we discussed," Sophia said from the passenger seat, her voice tight with concern. "These people aren't worth your diplomatic career." James checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting his tie with precision. His eyes, usually warm and thoughtful, had hardened into something resolute and unyielding. "I know exactly what I'm doing," he replied, his voice measured. The calm in his tone was more frightening than any anger. "This isn't about my career. This is about our daughter." He'd spent the flight home reviewing his approach. As a diplomat who'd negotiated peace between hostile nations, James knew that emotional outbursts rarely achieved objectives. Strategy and control, these were his weapons now. The school hallway fell silent as James entered, his polished shoes striking the tile floor with rhythmic purpose. Students pressed themselves against lockers, conversations dying mid-sentence. Teachers emerged from classrooms, curious about the sudden hush, only to step back when they saw him approaching. His diplomatic uniform, the impeccable suit, the subtle flag pin on his lapel, the unmistakable bearing of authority commanded respect. His expression demanded answers. A young teacher started to approach him, then thought better of it. The janitor nodded slightly as he passed, a gesture of subtle solidarity. James didn't break stride, moving with the confident bearing of someone who knew exactly where he was going. The administrative office door stood halfway open. Inside, Miss Winters was sorting through morning mail, her movements nervous and hurried. "Ambassador Chen," she said as he entered, rising quickly from her desk. "Dr. Hargrove is expecting you." "I'm sure she is," James replied, his voice pleasant, but his eyes cold. "Please inform her I've arrived." Miss Winters scurried to the principal's door, knocked once, and disappeared inside. Moments later, she emerged. "You can go in now." Dr. Hargrove stood behind her desk, attempting to project confidence, but James immediately recognized the signs of anxiety. The slightly too firm stance, the tightly clasped hands, the overly bright smile. "Ambassador Chen," she began, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming. I understand your concern as a parent, and I want to assure you that." James ignored the offered hand, instead placing a small digital recorder on her desk. "Dr. Hargrove, I'm not here for assurances. I'm here for answers." He pressed play, and Mr. Blackwell's recording filled the room. Dr. Hargrove's face drained of color as her own voice incriminated her, revealing not just what she had done to Melody's violin, but her explicit targeting of international students and those with disabilities. When the recording ended, James spoke quietly. That's one copy. Others are with my attorney, the school board, and the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. This recording was made without my consent, Hargrove stammered. It's inadmissible. In court, perhaps, James conceded. But we're not in court yet. We're having a conversation about your future. He sat down, smoothing his tie. Here's what's going to happen. You will resign, effective immediately. You will issue a public apology to my daughter. You will never work in education again. You can't dictate my career, Hargrove protested, finding her voice. I have tenure, a contract. What you have, James interrupted, is a history of discriminatory behavior that spans 3 schools and 15 years. Did you think those non-disclosure agreements would protect you forever? Hargrove's eyes widened. How did you? I'm a diplomat, Dr. Hargrove. Information is my currency. James leaned forward slightly. The parents you silenced at Glenwood Prep and Eastlake Academy were ordinary citizens with limited resources. I am not. He opened a folder he'd brought with him. 7 incidents at Glenwood, 4 at Eastlake, 9 here at Westridge, all targeting students who were either international, disabled, or both. All settled quietly to protect the school's reputations and your career. Those were different circumstances, Hargrove insisted, but her voice had lost its conviction. Were they? James asked mildly. Or was it the same prejudice wearing different masks? He closed the folder. You have until 5 p.m. today to submit your resignation. After that, everything in this folder becomes public. Every incident, every settlement, every victim. You destroy the school's reputation just to get revenge? Hargrove asked, incredulous. This isn't about revenge, James replied, rising to leave. It's about justice, and about ensuring you never harm another child. As he turned to go, Hargrove called after him. Your daughter was disrupting the academic environment. She needed to focus on real subjects, not just playing her precious violin. James paused at the door. My daughter maintained a 4.0 GPA while performing with orchestras across the country. She did this despite partial deafness that makes traditional learning challenging. The violin wasn't a distraction, it was her voice when the world couldn't hear her. He fixed Hargrove with a final look. And now, because of you, both have been silenced, but not for long. As James strode through the hallways toward the exit, he passed the music room. Through the open door, he could see Mr. Blackwell sitting alone at the piano, his shoulders slumped in defeat. James paused, then entered. Mr. Blackwell, he said quietly. The music teacher looked up, surprise and shame crossing his face. Ambassador Chen de Point 2, don't know what to say. I failed your daughter. I should have refused, no matter the consequences. You're being too hard on yourself, James replied. You were put in an impossible position, and you've made amends by coming forward with the truth. It doesn't feel like enough, Blackwell admitted. It rarely does, James acknowledged. But it's a start. And speaking of starts, I have a proposition for you. By the time James returned home, Melody was in her therapy session with Dr. Patel. Sophia was waiting in the kitchen, a pot of tea steeping on the counter. How did it go? She asked as James loosened his tie and sank into a chair. Hargrove will be gone by evening, he replied. The board chair called while I was driving home. They're accepting her voluntary resignation and issuing a public apology. And the legal case? Still proceeding, James confirmed. This isn't just about Melody anymore. There are other families, other children who deserve justice. Sophia poured 2 cups of tea. What about Melody? How do we help her heal from this? James sipped his tea thoughtfully. I have some ideas about that. But first, we need to get her voice back, both of them. Over the next few days, news of Dr. Hargrove's sudden resignation spread through Westridge Academy like wildfire. The official statement cited personal reasons, but rumors of the real cause circulated among students and parents. Zoe's video had now been viewed over 100,000 times, and local news outlets had picked up the story. Melody remained at home, continuing her therapy with Dr. Patel and working with a specialized music therapist who understood the connection between her hearing impairment and her musical expression. She still wasn't speaking, but she had begun playing Maestro Rossi's violin for short periods, finding comfort in the familiar act even if the instrument itself was new. One afternoon, a week after James's confrontation with Hargrove, the Chen family received unexpected visitors. Mr. Blackwell arrived with 3 students from Westridge's orchestra. Zoe, of course, but also Lucas Kim, a cellist, and Daria Petrov, a violist. They carried their instruments and determined expressions. "We have something to show Melody," Mr. Blackwell explained, "if she's willing." Melody appeared at the top of the stairs, curious but hesitant. She descended slowly, eyeing her classmates with uncertainty. "We've been working on something," Zoe said, stepping forward. "For you." The small group moved to the living room, where they arranged themselves in a semicircle. Mr. Blackwell sat at the piano, while the students prepared their string instruments. "This is a piece I composed," Mr. Blackwell explained to Melody. "It's called The Silenced Voice." He began to play, a haunting melody that started simply, then grew increasingly complex. The string players joined one by one, each adding a layer to the composition. The music told a story, beginning with harmony, descending into discord and silence, then gradually rebuilding towards something new, something different, but equally beautiful. As they played, tears streamed down Melody's face. The piece captured everything she had been unable to express: the loss, the fear, the silence, but also the possibility of renewal. When they finished, the room was quiet except for Melody's soft crying. Then, to everyone's surprise, she rose and retrieved Maestro Rossi's violin from its case. She positioned it under her chin, took a deep breath, and began to play, improvising a response to Mr. Blackwell's composition, her bow dancing across the strings with increasing confidence. The others watched in awe as Melody found her musical voice again, pouring her emotions into the instrument. When she finished, she lowered the violin and looked directly at her friends. "Thank you," she whispered, her spoken voice rusty from disuse but unmistakably present. Zoe rushed forward to embrace her, followed by the others. It was a breakthrough moment, not complete healing, but a significant step forward. Later that evening, as James and Sophia discussed the day's events, James revealed the next phase of his plan. "I've been in talks with the Westridge board," he explained. "They're eager to make amends, especially with the threat of legal action hanging over them." "What kind of amends?" Sophia asked skeptically. "They've agreed to establish a new arts program specifically designed for students with disabilities," James said. "Full funding, specialized instructors, adaptive instruments, everything needed to make music accessible to all students." "That's actually impressive," Sophia admitted. "But who will run it? The school needs new leadership after Hargrove." James smiled. "That's the best part. They've offered the position to Mr. Blackwell. He'll oversee both the regular music department and this new initiative." "And Melody? Will she return to Westridge?" "That's her decision," James replied. "She has options. The Juilliard pre-college division has expressed interest after seeing videos of her previous performances. Or she could return to Westridge under the new leadership, or we could explore other schools entirely." "She needs time," Sophia cautioned. "Rushing back into any school environment might be traumatic." "Agreed." James nodded. "Which is why I've arranged a sabbatical, 3 months in Italy, studying with Maestro Rossi's colleagues while he repairs her violin. If she wants to go, of course." The next morning, James presented these options to Melody over breakfast. She listened carefully, considering each possibility. "What do you think, little songbird?" he asked gently. "There's no wrong answer." Melody was quiet for a moment, then spoke softly. "I want to go to Italy, to heal, to learn, but then I want to come back." "To Westridge?" James asked, surprised. Melody nodded. "If Mr. Blackwell is running the new program, yes. I don't want Dr. Hargrove to win by driving me away, and I want to help other students like me." James felt a surge of pride at his daughter's courage. "Then that's what we'll do." 2 weeks later, as Melody prepared for her journey to Italy, a certified letter arrived at the Chen residence. It contained a formal apology from the Westridge Academy Board of Trustees acknowledging the inexcusable actions taken against Melody and outlining the steps being implemented to prevent similar incidents in the future. Accompanying the letter was a check for $250,000, far more than the estimated damage to the violin, an invitation for Melody to perform at the dedication ceremony for the new Inclusive Arts Center upon her return. "They're trying to buy our silence," Sophia observed cynically as James showed her the letter. "Perhaps," James acknowledged, "but they're also funding real change. Sometimes good things come from bad intentions." He handed the check to Melody. "This is yours, your compensation. You can use it however you wish." Melody studied the check, then looked up at her father. "I want to start a scholarship for students with disabilities who want to study music but can't afford instruments or lessons." James smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea." The day before Melody's departure for Italy, she asked to visit Westridge one last time. James was hesitant, concerned about the potential emotional impact, but Dr. Patel thought it might provide important closure. The campus was quiet when they arrived, classes having ended for the day. Mr. Blackwell met them at the entrance, now wearing the badge of Interim Arts Director. "There's something I want to show you," he told Melody, leading them toward the music building. Inside, the main rehearsal room had been transformed. Where once there had been standard chairs and music stands, now there was a variety of adaptive seating. New technology for visually impaired musicians sat alongside traditional instruments, and on the wall, a plaque read, "The Melody Chen Inclusive Arts Initiative, where every voice deserves to be heard." "The board fast-tracked the funding," Mr. Blackwell explained. "We'll be ready to launch when you return." Melody stared at the plaque, emotions playing across her face. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Blackwell replied. "Just come back to us when you're ready. Your seat in the orchestra will be waiting." As they turned to leave, Melody paused at the piano where everything had started. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, playing a simple melody at the beginning of a new composition. "I'll be back," she said, more to herself than to the others. "And I'll be stronger." 3 months later, Melody returned from Italy transformed. The shy, traumatized girl had blossomed into a more confident young musician. Working with master luthiers and teachers who understood her unique relationship with sound had accelerated both her healing and her musical development. She brought with her 2 treasures, her family's violin, expertly repaired by Maestro Rossi, though, as predicted, with a slightly different voice, and a new composition she had written during her time abroad. The dedication ceremony for the Inclusive Arts Initiative was held on a bright spring afternoon. The Westridge community gathered in the newly renovated auditorium, along with local media and representatives from arts organizations across the state. James and Sophia sat in the front row, watching as Melody took the stage. She wore a simple blue dress, her hair styled elegantly, her posture confident as she addressed the audience. "6 months ago, I lost my voice, both my spoken voice and my musical one," she began, her words clear and measured. "What happened in this school was wrong. It was cruel. It was discriminatory." A hush fell over the audience. "But from that cruelty has come something beautiful," Melody continued. "A program that will ensure students like May with different abilities, different backgrounds, different ways of experiencing the world will have the support they need to express themselves through art." She lifted her violin. "This instrument has been in my family for generations. It was damaged, but not destroyed. Its voice changed, but it still sings. Like me." Melody positioned the violin under her chin. "This piece is called Silence No More. It's for everyone who has ever been told their voice doesn't matter." As she began to play, the pure, emotional notes filled the auditorium. The composition told her story, the trauma, the silence, the healing, the return more eloquently than words ever could. By the final movement, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. When she finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Melody stood tall, accepting their applause not just for her performance but for her courage in returning, in reclaiming her voice, in transforming her pain into something that would help others. Backstage after the ceremony, James embraced his daughter. "Your mother would be so proud of you," he whispered. "I know I am." Melody smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, or Aunt Sophia, or Mr. Blackwell, or Zoe. You had help, James acknowledged, but the strength was always yours. As they walked through the campus toward their car, Melody paused to look back at the school that had been the site of both her greatest trauma and her remarkable recovery. You know, she said thoughtfully, Dr. Hargrove thought she was silencing me, but she actually gave me a louder voice than I ever had before. James considered his daughter's words. Sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest opportunities for growth. Exactly, Melody nodded. And now other students will have opportunities they might never have had otherwise. She lifted her violin case slightly. This instrument will never sound exactly the same as it did before, but maybe its new voice is just as important, different but equally valuable. As they drove away from Westridge Academy, Melody opened her window, letting the spring breeze ruffle her hair. The silence that had once imprisoned her had given way to a new symphonion of her own composition, played on her own termis. The story of the silenced melody had become something else entirely, a powerful new song of resilience, transformation, and hope. 6 months after the dedication ceremony, Melody stood on the stage of Carnegie Hall, her repaired violin tucked under her chin. At 16, she was the youngest featured soloist in the Young Musicians Foundation's annual showcase. The audience was filled with distinguished guests, including representatives from top conservatories around the world. In the front row sat her father and aunt, their faces shining with pride. Beside them was Mr. Blackwell, now the permanent director of arts at Westridge Academy, where the Inclusive Arts Initiative had already doubled in size due to overwhelming demand. As Melody prepared to play, she took a moment to scan the audience. So much had changed since that terrible day in Dr. Hargrove's office. The trauma remained part of her story, but it no longer defined her. It had become, instead, the catalyst for growth and change that extended far beyond her own life. The Melody Chen Scholarship now supported 15 students with disabilities pursuing musical education. The Westridge program had become a model for schools across the country. And Melody herself had found a new purpose, using her platform as a rising musical star to advocate for accessibility in the arts. She lifted her bow and began to play. Not despite what had happened, but because of it. The melody soared through Carnegie Hall, silenced no more. What would you have done if someone tried to silence your child's unique voice? Would you have fought the system as fiercely as Ambassador Chen, or looked for an easier path? If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share to help more people discover what happens when we refuse to let injustice have the final note.